So we have talked about devices, we have talked about applications, we have talked about identities, we have talked about data. Now we will move on to the infrastructure, and eventually we will move on to the network, because these are the six main areas, right? So with infrastructure, well, infrastructure, we have got so many different tools to protect the infrastructure. Like for instance, think infrastructure about your Azure infrastructure. So Azure is what? It is nothing but your infrastructure hosted in the cloud. It's a data center in the cloud. Your infrastructure itself can be protected by deploying Azure firewalls. Azure has got something known as Azure front doors. We can configure things like Bastion hosts in Azure. We have got DDoS protection plan in Azure, which will offer protection at the infrastructure level. Then we talked about Microsoft Defender for Cloud, which will protect the workloads that are stored within the infrastructure. So infrastructure is your data center. Within the data center, you'll have apps, you will have virtual machines, you will have storage services, you will have things like databases. So Microsoft Defender for Cloud takes care of that. One important thing, which is slightly related to Microsoft Defender for Cloud, let's say you have created a bunch of virtual machines and you have also got Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Microsoft Defender for Cloud will automatically onboard those virtual machines. Okay. Now you will realize one thing. If you have left the RDP port open, 3389 port open during the creation of the VM, then Defender for Cloud will give you a recommendation that your devices or the virtual machines are exposed outside. Because the moment you turn on port number 3389, by default, a public IP address gets created. When you create a virtual machine, you get two IP addresses, PRIP and PIP, private IP address and a public IP address. And generally what we do is we RDP to the public IP address in order to connect to the virtual machine. But Defender for Cloud will complain. So Defender for Cloud will give you a recommendation, configure JIT, which is known as just-in-time access. So with just-in-time access, what happens is the virtual machines having port number 3389 open in the configuration, that's fine. We have turned on port number 3389, but the incoming ports will be locked or blocked to begin with. When someone tries to connect to the virtual machine, approval must be granted. On giving approval, the ports will be opened and we will be able to interact with the virtual machine through remote desktop session. And when the session terminates, the port all gets blocked. So this is something known as JIT, just-in-time access. Okay. And infrastructure can be also protected by deploying something known as Sentinel. Sentinel is Microsoft's version of CM or SIM or SOAR. SIM stands for Security Information and Event Management. SOAR stands for Security Orchestration, Automation, and Response. Sentinel has got the capability of collecting information from a wide range of infrastructure, on-premises firewall, on-premises server. It can ingest security logs from Entra ID, on-premises Active Directory, on-premises SQL server. It can ingest the security logs from Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Apps, and it gives us a one-stop dashboard for the threat detection. Okay. According to MITRE, it can take up to 144 days for the threat to get detected, but it takes only 24 hours to 48 hours for the compromise to happen. So the objective of Sentinel is to reduce that time spent by ingesting security logs from different platforms, different infrastructure, and offering us a one-stop dashboard for threat hunting, threat investigation, and threat mitigation. So Sentinel plays a major role here as well. Okay. And on top of this, especially with the virtual machines, we have got something known as a Bastion host. So what happens over here is generally when we provision a virtual machine, and if the virtual machine does not have a public IP address, we connect using site-to-site VPN, point-to-site VPN, or if you have got an express route circuit purchased from a telco provider, you connect to the virtual machine using the private IP address. But if you have not deployed any kind of VPN services, if you do not have any private links like express route, we rely on the public IP address. So now what we can do is we can basically have a Bastion host. Instead of connecting using RDP, we can connect using a Bastion host. As the name suggests, Bastion, like, those tall walls in front of the castle which stops attack. Bastion does the same thing. Bastion is basically Microsoft's version of a jump box or jump server in the cloud. Request goes to the Bastion. Bastion inspects the traffic, sanitizes the traffic, then only the traffic goes in. And also we have got things like distributed denial of service protection plan, which offers protection against distributed denial of service attacks. Azure has got so many different types of firewalls. Azure has got Azure Firewall. We have got web application firewalls or WAF. We can place these services within the DMZ zone just to stop the external attacks. So there are plenty different tools available with the help of which we can protect our infrastructure that resides within Azure.